Thank you for joining us. I am Felicia Valenzuela, and today we will be speaking with Minister within the Ministry of Public Works, Deodat Indar, MP. Minister, today we're going to be talking to you about government's first year in office, of course. So thank you so much for speaking with us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yes, sir. One of the first things I want to begin with is just to ask you, how was the 1 year in office?
Well, to start, it was challenging. And then during the challenging period of the budget that we had to get for us, the emergency one, last year, there was a short period for procurement and implementation for the end of 2020. Remember, you have to spend out your funds. So that piece was challenging. We worked, I can tell you for me, some did 18 hours plus. Not complaining, but for us it was challenging. But then when you move on into the next year, 2021, it's there's some level of job satisfaction because you would have gone out and dealt with a number of issues and made a lot of people better off. And as we are progressing to the end of the year, it's a year that is full of possibilities. So I think challenging is the first word I would describe it by, and then secondly, job satisfaction, and thirdly, endless opportunities at the end of the first year
All
for the
right,
country.
Minister. Thank you. I wanted to ask you about some of the major projects undertaken by your ministry, but I know in particular that you're responsible for some key areas within your ministry, and if you can guide me along. I know when you came in initially, you came in during the time of the pandemic. So how were you able to manage some of those, areas? Because it took a lot of execution, and so how did you deal with those?
So firstly, on assuming office, we had to do what we call a quick analysis of what you found. And what we found is a number of areas that had a massive amount of issues. The areas that we're dealing with in public works would be sea and river defense, the maritime sector, transport and harbors, MARAD, Maritime Administration Department, and transport and harbors, those two. We had the CGIA, and we had to deal with the GCAA in terms of the aviation sector and 𝐎𝐍𝐄. We had the hinterland airstrips and roads, all the hinterland roads, and so we worked closely with GGMC on the mining roads. We did the public access roads. Then we had the roads and bridges under the we call work services group. It's a large, like a body within our ministry that have the execution of roads, bridges, traffic lights, you name it, everything that the ministry does in there. So, we have these sectors. Individual organizations would run them, like CGIA, MARAD, and so GCAA, and the ferries and so. So we have that. And what we found that to be in the first couple of months was to really to hold the reins of them and deal with some of the issues that we found, and we found a lot. First thing is in terms of sea and river defense, the Danzig area was open out. Water was going in, destroying the people's farmlands, their livelihood. We had to go and deal with that. We had to get new contractors in. We had to start to work with them to get the thing closed. It's only about a month ago the entire thing was closed. Okay. The entire stretch, because Danzig, Glacier Loss, Content, that whole stretch there. And then you have up in Berbice and so. So that is with sea and river defense. With transport sector, transport and harbors, they never used to pay NIS and GRA, the remittance for the deduct from the staff. Okay. That institution, and when we looked there, they had about $988 million in liabilities we found them in, right? So we had to deal with that and address those issues. MARAD had a lot of issues too. When we gone into government, we found that a lot of the spares that were ordered and paid for fully did not deliver to MARAD to fix those vessels that they have. We had to deal with that issue. Then the CGI airport. I mean, there's so much in the news about that. But that was, if anything was to go wrong with a contract, went wrong with that particular one. China Harbor, they were doing that, and there were a number of defects.
That was one of the questions that I wanted to initially ask. How was government able to straighten out? I know it has been straightened
I'll
out.
tell you how.
Yes,
I'll
so
tell
if
you
you
how
can just
briefly.
guide us through so
It,
that people understand
well, I'll tell you
what
how.
was happening.
Our president, Dr. Irfan Ali, led the team and sat with the contracting people, and they sent down some of their representative from China, sat with them on a number of occasions and worked through what are the remedial actions. At first, they didn't agree, and they said they have changed the scope and a whole other thing under the APNU government. And the contract is a fixed price contract. So they're not supposed to be those things in it. And we found a way to meet a middle ground, and they are doing their part now to execute, and we are doing our part. I think now it's going in a good direction, where the works is being completed on those defects that we first identified, the engineers identified, are being remedied, and we are having the extension for the 2 more air bridges with the new dispensation. So that is going on stream. We are now doing a new building there. Government side is doing a new building there. That contract was just awarded, and we're going to start that. But it will be part of the superstructure at CGIA.
All right, but I know this is not the only, in terms of aviation and infrastructure development, this is not the only one. And I don't want you to go without mentioning LETEM and just giving us an update as to
well,
what's happening.
if you fly to LETEM, it is visible on the ground. The aerodrome is, the runway is excellent. I mean, it can take large aircrafts and so on. And it's to develop that part of the country too, so large aircraft can go there. Remember, the aviation sector is what we want it to be. If you want it to be a regional, Guyana to be a regional aviation hub, we can make it that way. We just have to have the will and the foresight and work towards that. So right now, most persons use Panama to go to South America, and some to the Caribbean and so. Where we are, we have the entire eastern seaboard there. We have the Caribbean countries, and we can be on a hub for South America too. As an oil and gas, a new kid on the block, a new producer, these things are possibilities. These things are things we can work towards. So we are making sure our aviation sector is, being strengthened, and then you build it out. So that is just part of it.
All right. I wanted to ask you about some of the major challenges that you've encountered, and you've already shed light on a few, but I wanted to ask you about the energy sector. And I know in particular it falls under the Prime Minister's office, but you have responsibility in terms of managing. One of the issues that we had coming in, obviously for a very long time, but coming into government, we were faced with a lot of power shortage and so on. But I know it's not just on the surface. So if you can tell us about some of the investment that government has been able to make in this 1 year.
Well, government, from the time we got into office, GPL was $13.2 billion. They had that in receivables. And $13.2 billion is a lot of money, right? It's actually, if GPL brings in about $45 billion per annum, look at that, it's like 1/3. It's close to 1/3 to your total revenue take for the entire year is outstanding. And most of the outstanding areas is government agencies and local government, office of the, at that time, Ministry of the Presidency, every ministry, every municipality owed GPL and weren't paying them. So the company is being, locked off at the leg, can't do anything because they don't have any money because nobody's paying them. And if central government is not paying them, they're operating only what the private sector is doing, paying them. And then you have fuel to deal with. You have maintenance costs. You have your staff to pay. You have a whole host of things. So any company cannot operate like that. So when we came in, there's a whole host of issues with GPL. And they took some money and they took some money to buy a 46.5 megawatts plant, which is now going to be commissioned sometime within a month or so. So we had to get all of those things running, bring them in, set them up, make sure everything. We had to do all of that. In the electricity sector, so GPL had a lot of issues. The Hinterland Electrification Company, which have 7 satellite companies that serves Hinterland, LETEM, Madia, Port Kaituma, Mabaruma. We have Kwakwan, you have Linden. That company have these satellite companies. All of those companies was in a bad state, financially and operationally. When we came in, Mabaruma did not have power for 6 weeks because of a single belt.
Okay.
Right, so we had to deal with all these things, regularize them, and bought new engines for them, reliable, so they don't have that kind of power outages. GPL, what they're doing now is fixing all of them twisted poles, sag wires, conductors are bad, GAC switches. They're all over the country now fixing back all of these things that left there and dilapidated. They little to no maintenance were done. They didn't have the inventory. They bought what they had to buy. They didn't buy inventory to make sure that the maintenance people could go out and do the maintenance.
Okay.
Then we had the management of the Wärtsilä engines on the PPDI. That is now, we now made that better. We have a lot of new systems in place to manage those engines, and the uptime is in the 90 percentile.
Okay.
Right, so we have that going. With GEA, the way in which we manage the import of fuel and so, a lot of energy has been placed on strengthening the management of that, so they have smuggle fuel into the system. So a lot of, it's been strengthened in collaboration with them and GRA to make sure that we lock down some of those things. So on the energy sector, a lot has been done, but more so in GPL and so on, places that didn't get electricity before are getting now. People who never had since the Republic, they didn't have electricity are getting, like Baibu, like Wallace Delight, like Facade, like right at opposite Torkine there, opposite the convention center, there's a stretch of place there, about 15 houses. Decades they didn't have electricity. Last Christmas I made sure they had electricity. Okay. But as we go out, we keep building out and building out. But everything costs money. So you have to be done in a way that you can afford. Right? And now we are broadening that now. Now, as you can see, a manifesto promise, we have put back Amaila on the front burner. So there's an RFP out for Amaila, which is 165 megawatts of power using hydro. Then we, through the Vice President and the Gas to Shore Task Force, we are looking at the 300 megawatts at Wales Gas to Energy project. So all of that will come into about, to give you about over 500 megawatts of power. And GPL's, by 2025, their outlook is that you might need around 465 megawatts of power based on everything that they see are happening. But as more investment come into country and more demand on the system, you'll have to cater for those.
All right. Minister, before I ask you for your goals and projections going into year 2, I remember covering a particular assignment with you, and I'm going back to this because I believe, like you've mentioned while you were talking to me just now, that a lot of what you had to deal with was management of these particular companies. And we're talking especially about energy. I remember you had to become stringent is the word. I could find another one, but stringent comes to mind. With these companies that defaulter, and there was a particular cable that was damaged by a ship that was passing. And I'm mentioning this because these were some of the issues that caused the blackouts and so throughout the country. And these were some of the things that you immediately had to deal with coming into office. Could you give us an update on that since that incident?
Yeah, well, that was a nightmare incident because it happened in a COVID environment and we could not get the technicians out to China to come to Guyana. We had to route them through Brazil. They couldn't go through the US. Right? We had to get the Chinese embassy here to assist us to get those guys here. They fixed it. It cost us over $1 million US, $230-something million in that vicinity to fix back that cable. It's a big cable. You had to bring it up. You had to make sure it doesn't. You had to join it together using specialized materials and so on, put it down back, bury it at a particular depth, and made sure that no other ship goes in the area. So GPS is now put in what you call a beacon now to the navigation people so they can pick it up that there's a cable here. We don't allow anybody to put their vessels down there anymore. With respect to the company, that the ship that actually did that severing of the cable, that I've actually commandeered that ship when it came back to the country. We have actually seized it, and then we had a court order. We got a court order to do that. And when we got that, the people, the agents and so, they made representation and that matter, they lodged an insurance, and the ship, that matter is in the court now, right? So we are supposed to get resolution of that. But I want to go back a little over to infrastructure.
Yes.
So our ministry, as guided by the mandate when we were in opposition, and we promised the people a transformative agenda. So the transformative agenda is to deal with the Demerara Harbor Bridge, the Quarantine Bridge, the highways that we're going to build at the back from Ogle to Eccles and then further. Then we have the Schooner to Parika Road, the Goshen Road, the connector road from Bartica through Macaura to Timeri. These are the big projects, and the Linden to Lethem.
Yes.
Lethem.
Lethem,
The
straight
first
to
phase
Lethem.
is now in its tender stage,
Okay.
right? We just pre-qualified the contractors, and they're reviewing that, and we go to tender. So we have these big, massive projects. These are the transformative agenda, and every single one of them are moving apace. We already went out to bid for the Demerara Harbor Bridge. We had the EOI for the Quarantine Bridge.
Okay.
We already have the bidding going on, shortlist and bidding going on for the Ogle to Eccles, funded through India.
Yeah.
That piece there. Ministry of Housing is doing some extensions on the road moving into Diamond. We already have a feasibility study and an alignment done. We're going to start doing some clearing of the alignment on the Schoonard to Parika one. Same thing for the Goshen one, right? All those were passed in the budget. So all of these transformative items, we are working on them, and things are happening on them. Then there's a rehabilitative agenda, which is all of these community roads. We call them miscellaneous roads, urban roads, public main access roads. So we are doing, if you check, everywhere works is happening, in every community. Because we wanted people to see government work in their community. Places that never seen any kind of work in years are now seeing work in the schemes, in the housing schemes. The issue though is that everybody want their infrastructure to get done now. They don't have the patience anymore. They waited too long, and we have to deliver. And I guess there's a mismatch between the timing of delivery and the expectation. But we are working with every single community. When we have a budgeted amount, it is split to every single NDC. A portion goes to the NDC area. So something is done in there, right? So we make sure they build out all of the roads, change out the culverts. Same thing for hinterland airstrips. We are fixing them back, resurfacing them, and the roads. We started with the roads when we came in. We did a lot of work, and then the flood came, destroyed a lot of the infrastructure. A lot of the bridges in the hinterland too are what we call wooden and pile bridges.
Yeah.
And with the heavy laden trucks moving in the hinterland, tends to twist them and turn them, and then they end up in a breakage. We had a lot of issues there that we had to respond to deal with them. But we do have a plan to deal with the entire stretch. There are 38 bridges from Linden to Lethem. There are 38 bridges. We have a plan to deal with them. But we are starting phase one from Linden to Mabura, the resurfacing of the road, building a highway there, right? And that, as I said to you, we should have a contract signed sometime around November for that as well too.
All right. Minister Indar, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us. I know it was a brief conversation that we had, but you've obviously left a lot for us to, think about. Any last words from you before we wrap up?
Well, this is the first year we're in government, and we wanted to make sure that we come into government and have the right energy and attitude. One of the things I do under the guidance of my seniors in government is that I try my best to go out to every community and see the issue, hear from the people, and give them a response. They must get a response, because even if the response is that I can't do it now, I have to tell you when I'm going to do it.
Yes.
And if I'm going to do it, I have to tell you when I'm going to do it, how it's going to be done. And so people want that. They want that connection with their political leaders, and they want that with their government. And I believe that myself and my other colleagues too, because everybody is in the field. They're meeting people and addressing their issues right there. And that is from the leadership of President Ali. He went out and did some outreaches himself where he had everybody with him, and then we dealt with issues right there and get them fixed right away. Okay. Right? I think that is the kind of dispensation that we have, because we all go out and meet with people, go walk the community, check the place, ensure that we understand what is happening on the ground. So, you know, you don't sit and just read reports. I'm not that guy, and I see my other colleagues, and so they're out here too. So I believe that is what is expected over the next couple of years, that we will continue that, make sure we engage with people and deal with their issues as they come to us.
All right. Minister Indar, again, thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for watching.
Thank you very much.